The one other note I would say around this is as we've been doing this, is the way that we're able to address diversity, equity, and inclusion goals that sponsors have. A couple of stats recently is, there was one study we supported where of the 2,500 patients that EmVenio enrolled, 65% of those were from underrepresented population.
Welcome to Science with a Twist, a podcast for curious people who enjoy exploring how science impacts our daily lives. From technology that helps the fight against COVID-19 to solutions that help clean the water we drink, is all thanks to science. In each episode, members of Thermo Fisher Scientific's team talk to experts who are on the cutting edge of redefining how we exist. Let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Science with a Twist. My name is John Manns. I'm a Senior Director in the Innovation and Decentralized Clinical Trial Group within PPD, which is the Clinical Research Division of Thermo Fisher Scientific. On this episode, we'll talk about the role of clinical research organizations, otherwise known as CROs, and in clinical trials and ensuring the conduct of safe, ethical clinical trials to help support the development of new, life-saving drugs and medical devices that we hope will benefit millions of people around the world. To provide a bit of an explanation, clinical trials are research studies that use patients and healthy volunteers to test potential new medicines. One of the challenges that we face in clinical research is that only a small percentage of patients actually participate. Experts rate that number around 5%. And so one of the challenges we face is that this makes it extremely difficult to enroll and recruit participants into our trials. One of the challenges also is that this does not accurately reflect the population as a whole. And when we think about clinical research, it's very important that we think about a representative patient population and what we're trying to do there. One of the things that we have seen is that COVID, of course, impacted all of us, right? It impacted clinical trials in tremendous ways, some for the better, some for the worse. It made it very difficult for patients to actually go to a site and travel to the site. So we had to come up with alternative methods and methodologies to do this. One of the other challenges also was that those who were most impacted already had less access to clinical sites than the general population. As a result, one of the things we implemented was a variety of flexible decentralized solutions in our DCT ecosystem. This helps to increase patient access across the globe and really improve their experience. The solutions that we'll talk about here today really talk about how we save time and help efficiencies there. How do we improve our data quality? And additionally, how do these strategies create additional patient flexibilities to allow better participation in our trials? These models also help us expand the geographic reach of sites. So if we think about a normal site and how far patients are willing to travel, one of the things we see here is that we reduce that travel burden for these patients and thus allowing that greater geographic reach for them. The other thing that this does by utilizing other means of collecting data, including digital technology, is it really improves the timely access to data and also the data quality. One of the things that we really focus here on at Thermo Fisher is keeping the patient at the center of everything we do. We really want to make sure that our trials allow everyone to participate and make it easy for their participation. As part of this, we've established a relationship with EmVenio Research, and we'll talk a little bit more about them today. One of their main offerings is state-of-the-art mobile clinical research sites. They combine these with expert staff and really go deep into the communities where our patients live and work. This really enables those patients in those areas to participate in our trials and participate in clinical research without having to travel to faraway research sites. So to talk more about these mobile sites and the efforts to decentralize clinical trials are Tim Rich, who is Vice President of Digital and Decentralized Solutions here at PPD, and Thad Waltham, who's President of EmVenio Research. Gentlemen, welcome to Science with a Twist.
Great to be here.
Thanks, John. Great to be here.
So Tim, let's start with the big picture. How do we think about the decentralized clinical trial space? And can you give us some background on how Thermo Fisher's clinical research business unit is really looking at that space and moving us in that direction?
Absolutely. Thanks, John. And as I say, it's great to be here to talk about this exciting topic. I guess in terms of how PPD have looked at this is, the first thing to state is we looked at this pre-pandemic and Obviously lots and lots of things have changed throughout the course of the pandemic. But we started looking at it in an incubator form because we were committed to trying to get the future strategy right from the get-go. And we actually identified decentralization as a huge growth area. And on the back of that, we identified the need to actually create a dedicated business unit, which is focused on all of the solutions and the application of decentralized solutions. I think it's fair to say that, the pandemic took it to another level that we could have only have dreamed about when we started it. But it's also fair to say that our thinking has evolved as well. It's the whole industry around us has evolved, but so has our thinking. And one of the points there, I guess, just to highlight is the change management concept of decentralization and the adoption of that. And I'll talk about that maybe later in the session today, but it's fair to say that change management component is absolutely critical in terms of the decentralized adoption. And I think also in terms of when I look ahead in terms of decentralization, I just see a great landscape for patients and the partnerships with EmVenio, and also the kind of opportunities PPD and Thermo Fisher Scientific have in really driving forward unique and collaborative solutions, all for the better of the patient, and really focusing in on reducing that patient burden.
Yeah, Tim, I think that change management conversation is going to be a good one. I think that's more important than people think about. So one of the things that we know we talk about the use of mobile sites here and everything, but before we get into that, Thad, I'd like to have you talk a little bit about, how are you guys at EmVenio really looking at the space in general? What are some of the processes you've put in place, and also how, thinking about the collaboration that we have here today? And can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the first thing to really understand about mobile sites is they're complicated. They're complicated to deliver, and that's driven by a pair of factors. The first is that traditional regulatory guidance is not set up to work this way. And so we do tend to push up against, bend, and sometimes break what have become sort of norms in the industry. But the way that we've been able to work through that is really understanding the difference between what's a regulatory recommendation versus a requirement. And frequently we find that a lot of the norms are based on recommendations. And so there is room in working with regulators to do things in a different way. And so that's the first. The second is around, moving into and developing trust in communities where a mobile site might be located. And there are a number of factors that go into that, but really, thinking about how you can implant a mobile site into a community in a really localized way is really important. The next piece of all of this is that, clinical trials are a protocol-driven process. And so the earlier that, folks like the PPD Digital and Decentralized Services team and EmVenio can get into the conversation with sponsors, the better we're able to help guide a protocol design to best be able to leverage flexible approaches to when and where patients on a study are engaged. And so I think those considerations are really important in terms of how we are successful in delivering. And to date with this collaboration, there's really two ways that we're working with PPD. The first is through a site extension model where our mobile sites are an extension of an existing research site, really complementing and enhancing what that site is already doing today, and allowing for mobilization out into the community and expanding geographic reach of those sites. The second is in a standalone site model where the mobile site actually acts as the site itself. And so these are both models that we're deploying with PPD, really helping to drive equality in research as we're able to reach underrepresented populations. And I think with this, we've got some great examples of how this is really helping patient retention and driving some other positives in clinical research.
Yeah, thank you, Thad. And I think one of the things I like to think about when we talk about mobile sites is really there are more similarities to a traditional site than there are differences. And we often don't focus on that. We just think, oh, this is different. And we spend too much time worrying about those differences. And so really coming back to kind of those regulatory requirements and what really do we need to do to bring up a site, right? It's really not all that much different, right? So Tim, I want to turn back to you for a second. We talk a lot about mobile sites and kind of their broad use cases, but can Can you talk specifically about their benefit to maybe rare disease studies?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, John. I mean, I think if we kind of look at the rare disease population, I think we're all aware that rare disease research over the past number of years is increased significantly for good reason, and it's going to continue that trend. But I think if we also kind of, the way I look at the rare disease, it's certainly one of the most challenging, if not the challenging populations to recruit into. And we all know, right, that the very nature of rare disease makes recruitment incredibly hard. So when we do have patients in rare disease studies, every data point, every sample, every visit is the utmost importance. And we put an incredible amount of effort within PPD to focus on strategies to make sure rare disease studies run successfully and within the time requirements that we have. Maybe an example I'd like to share is, what one of the fantastic things that the partnership with EmVenio has enabled us to do is to be really, really strategic and incredibly patient focused. And we actually had a study which was in a rare disease population where the patient didn't want the inconvenience and intrusion of assessments being completed in their home. And what we were actually able to do was take one of the mobile sites right to that patient's home, enable that patient could then partake, and we could collect patient procedures and activities right on that mobile site. And I kind of think about that. And as an industry, we talk about patient centricity. I don't think there's anything more patient centric that we could do in terms of actually truly taking a site, a research site with all the research professionals on board and actually taking it to that patient's home. I just think that's an incredible story. It's incredible for that patient and it's incredible for that part of research. And it also really talks to great strength of the partnership that we've built with EmVenio. And I guess just to kind of conflict and kind of contrast that with what we would have had to do in the past, we would have actually had to fly that patient a number of states or a number of hundreds of miles, which is just incredibly inconvenient for that patient to partake in research. So, so excited, and I'm so pleased that we've got these capabilities that we can deploy and we can really focus on that patient centricity. And as Fad mentioned there, I think it enables us to take that patient-centric to another level, but it also enables us to access patients that we weren't able to access previously. So whether that's in particular underrepresented communities and so forth. But having these capabilities enables us to be more dynamic in terms of the strategies that we can deploy. And the rare disease, John, is one example, which I'm really passionate about.
Tim, we talked there about flexibility. I think the way I think about that is really around patient choice, right? We're giving patients choices now of where their clinical research visit may occur. So, and I think that on that point, we talk a bit about the flexibility and the benefits of the mobile sites that bring to this. Can you kind of dig a little bit deeper into that and talk really about some of the additional flexibilities and some of the options of where can these mobile units actually live, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great point, which is with the mobilization, we can be almost anywhere. There are very few limitations. I mean, there are challenges to solve to being almost anywhere, but there's few limitations to being there. And in doing that, as we said, as an extension of a site that's either over capacity or extending that geographic reach, we reduce that travel burden, as Tim noted, and really help both in terms of patient experience, but also just the ability to retain patients that might not otherwise be able to continue on with the study. From a flexibility standpoint, as Tim mentioned, our mobile sites are staffed with truly expert research teams. And so, the nurses and nurse practitioners that typically, are on these mobile sites, we have that flexibility to bring a mobile site to a community or to a home, to send one of our research team staff directly to the home to conduct a clinical trial visit, or to engage that patient, via technology through a virtual visit. So it's really that flexibility that allows us to engage the patient where and how they're ready and best able to be engaged, and that's really a critical point here. Is not all patients are willing to have a nurse enter their home, but bringing that mobile unit to them, we offer the flexibility. And so now with PPD, as we continue to build out a global community reach model of mobile and similar sites, this will allow us to really, localize what we're doing and get to the broadest population possible. The one other note I would say around this is as we've been doing this, is the way that we're able to address diversity, equity, and inclusion goals that sponsors have. A couple of stats recently is, there was one study we supported where of the 2,500 patients that EmVenio enrolled, 65% of those were from underrepresented populations. And so it really showed that value there. And what we're seeing more broadly is across the studies that we support, greater than 40% of the patients we're working with come from minority populations. And so contrast that against, industry stats of around 10 to 20% as an average. We're offering more than double the ability to reach these populations that otherwise don't have access. So I think what we're seeing is the results are really bearing out on the value that we're bringing together.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And it's kind of funny as I think about decentralized clinical trials and decentralized solutions, right? We didn't really go about this thinking that we might get deeper into the representative patient population. We did it really to reduce burden. But I think, one of the results definitely that we've seen is that higher diversity, higher inclusion rate of those patient populations that don't typically participate. So I think that's been great. Tim, I want to turn back to you for a minute and ask you to really weigh in and talk a little bit more about some of the other tools and methodologies that we see and how we support our clinical trials in some of our decentralized efforts. So you talk a little bit about, some of the roles that these play in supporting our DCTs?
Absolutely. John, I think if I kind of think about it, the industry around us is moving at pace. We just need to look in kind of our private lives in terms of how fast technology has evolved, right? And that's the same's obviously being replicated in research. I also think we're going through an evolution of sites as well. I think, sites are going through a big evolution and new site models are transpiring as well. In terms of operational execution, operational oversight, we're evolving at pace as well in the industry in terms of how data is being cleaned, how data is being monitored. We're going through a huge evolution. And then if you put in there kind of the community, so we've talked about kind of EmVenio enabling us to access parts of communities. I also think there's a lot of community and moving research into the community and healthcare infrastructure. I think that's going to help us kind of really advance us going forward. And I kind of think also, John, you mentioned it earlier there as well, is the choice. I think what we are going to see over the next couple of years is a dynamic kind of protocol where PIs and patients are going to have choices within those protocols, which us as industry and researchers, we're going to need to make sure we've got flexible, dynamic capabilities that can actually meet that patient's choice. And it all keeps coming back to we are putting the patient at the center of research. So that's kind of where I feel, look at the landscape. And if I kind of look at the lens in terms of what I feel our clients want from us as a global CRO, the clients are coming to us for pre-validated solutions. They want to innovate within studies. They want to make research more accessible for patients. They want trials to run faster. They want high retention. They want the diversity. And they're coming to us as a global CRO to have all those options and solutions available to them. They're also looking to us to streamline industry pain points, right? They're looking to us to streamline some of the contractual process. They're looking for us to streamline some of the operational processes as well and the data journeys as well. So there's a lot of those components that clients are now really looking for us as global CROs to actually bring to the fore. And again, the partnership with EmVenio absolutely enables us to do that. Slightly broad, what we've done within Digital and Decentralized is we've created a decentralized ecosystem. And what that DCT ecosystem is, it's a toolkit, if you think about it. It's a toolkit of solutions, whether that be technology, operational, site structures, community, etc., which enable us to serve the broad client base and the variability of protocols that we see day to day. And it enables our consultants to ensure we're applying the right solution to the right protocol at the right time. So, I would say right now we are in one of probably the most exciting parts of clinical research. We're going through huge change, and it is just getting better for patients. We are opening access to patients.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Tim. So can you talk a little bit more about, what's next? Where are we going after this, right? What else are we going to do?
Yeah, I mean, if I look at that through a number of lenses, so I think, as I said, no, first thing to say, again, just to reiterate, this is exciting. This is such an exciting time for research. I also think now we're post-pandemic, we've probably never been in this situation before where we have so much general awareness of research just in the general population. We've never been here before where research is in the news. Research has been talked about in terms of the vaccinations and so forth. So there's an increased awareness, and with that, what we really want to do is put the patients at the center of everything that we're doing. So we're looking at how we can increase access to research for patients. So what we really want to be able to do is take research as a genuine treatment option for patients as well. So we've got to enable those kind of conversations and that access point as well. But alongside of that, we have to continue raising the awareness of research and raising the awareness of what options, and make it easier to understand what options there is available to patients for research. And then if I look at it from a science perspective, sites are going through big evolution at the moment as well, with the adoption of some of the decentralized tools. And as I mentioned, also moving into community and research and kind of using various strategies to complement the sites. And as Fad mentioned earlier, where we're using some of the EmVenio mobile sites actually to assist current sites kind of perform research studies as well. And one of the things what we've learned over the past couple of years is, again, going back to my earlier point about this being a change management, and it's a change management curve, we have to support all of the stakeholders. So one of the things we've just rolled out within PPD is actually our DCT network. And that network is focused on listening to the information we've heard from sites. They're struggling to manage in this new DCT world at times. So we've rolled out certification in collaboration with the SCRS to support them on that journey. So, we've got to keep focus on those key stakeholders, John. And if I kind of bring that more of an internal reflection, I mean, Thermo Fisher Scientific, PPD, and digital and decentralized, we've consulted on 2,000 DCT strategies. We've deployed over 400 solutions, and we've deployed them across 60 countries. I think for us and the rest of the industry and us as researchers, then the next step really is embedding those solutions into standard research studies. And as Fad mentioned, we're a protocol-driven industry. We've got to incorporate these solutions as standard. And I think that's where we want to go as an industry over the next couple of years and take this. And then bringing it back to kind of the EmVenio partnership, I'm so excited about co-development of some industry-leading solutions, whether that be around capabilities, whether that be, as Fad mentioned earlier, about the innovative mobile site networks, or even some of the potential co-resourcing models and opportunities that we've got. I think, we are on the cusp of so much greatness here, and I just can't wait to get going.
Yeah, it's exciting, isn't it? So, Thad, can you weigh in as well? Where do you see all this going?
Yeah, I think we'll continue to push on how we flex all of the options to engage patients wherever they are, and what's the right blend to create the best enrollment and retention opportunity for sponsors. And as we do that, we're learning so much more around this concept of applying localization, which is really adapting to meet the language, culture, and traditions of a specific community, and using that and thinking about how trials are run globally, but in each local community that we enter into, they're all different. And so this idea of localizing sites to help sponsors achieve their diversity and equity goals, and engaging and creating trust in these communities is really powerful. And so as I think about this partnership, as Tim mentioned, within it, we're also proactively looking to expand into additional geographies across Europe, Latin America, and elsewhere. So it's really, how do we take this localized approach but apply it globally?
Thank you for that. So Tim and Thad, just wanted to take this time to really thank you guys for your thoughts today. I think it's a really exciting space. I think COVID has taught us all a lot, and it's really opened our eyes to, the possible, I think is probably the right way to think about it. So as we go forward and, really think about this, I'm excited about the strides we've made so far, but I really think that we're just beginning. And I think both of you kind of talked to this, right? We're at that cusp of where this starts to become almost the norm in how we do things, right? And I think that's what patients are going to kind of expect from us going forward. So I do thank you for your time today. For those of you on the line, if you'd like to learn more about this, you can go to www.ppd.com/DCT to learn more. And I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in to another episode of Science with a Twist. Next time, join us to learn a little bit more about diversity in clinical trials, a topic we touched a little bit on today, but we'll dig a little bit deeper into that. So Thad and Tim, thanks again for your time today, and I look forward to seeing everyone next time.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Science with a Twist. This show is brought to you by Thermo Fisher Scientific, the world leader in serving science. If you enjoyed this episode, then follow Science with a Twist wherever you get your favorite podcasts.